Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And we've done it. We've reached the final chapter of Right Away and All at Once. And it is actually called Right Away and All at Once.
Spent a lot of time on that title.
Yeah, it was very original. No, I didn't know what else to say. So I just wrapped it up with the title of the book. But yeah, so this was a short one, and it was sort of like a wrap up type chapter. And there is some like epilogue and some talk about mentors after this chapter. But in regards to the actual context of the book, this is it. This is the last 20 minutes or whatever it took to read it. Yeah. So
if you've been waiting for us to get back to our regularly scheduled programming, we'll be back shortly.
It's on the way, or some version of it. Yes. Who knows what that looks like?
Yeah. We've been doing this so long, I don't know what else to do.
I how many episodes have we done on the book? Is it?
I don't know.
It's got to be 14, right?
14
chapters
15?
or whatever. So
that's what basically since the first of the year. I mean, it's the first quarter, or give or take.
Yeah, I had not considered that we haven't done. I guess we have mixed
a couple.
We mixed in a couple.
Yeah, but not many. Right?
Not many.
It's been mostly.
Yeah. I've been missing it a little bit, just being able to. Now I got to stay. It's hard to get off topic when I have to be on topic. I have so many options available when we get back to regular podcasts.
I would not suggest this has always kept us on topic. We have
closer to the topic. Like I was like topic adjacent.
Yeah.
No, the bigger problem is we've had to try and circle back to the topic.
Yeah.
How are we going to marry what we just talked about to anything about?
We have to start and end at a topic
at the same point.
How about just that I was? It was a lot to have to stay with a theme.
Yes.
Instead of just being able to, we sit down and Brian's like, hey, what are we going to do this week? And we're like, we're going to talk about absolutely nothing. Yeah. I'd like to talk about cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Right? Like we haven't gotten to do that. That's the kind of veering off the road I was talking about.
Yeah, it's good and bad, right? I mean, there's like freedom in not having a topic.
Yep.
But there's also like at times like, what are we going to talk about? Yep. And this kept it very like streamlined,
Behind the scenes, the worst part is it created homework for all of us, which created some logistical challenges because of making sure that
we had done our homework.
Yeah, done the homework. Yeah,
let's be honest. I don't know
the chapter.
I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I was not known for doing my homework. It wasn't my strong suit. Yeah. Brian probably did his homework, I think.
Well, honestly, the hardest part for me, I was not great at homework in high school, but I'm better at homework or prep work now.
Yeah.
Because I like to feel prepared. I realized we're off topic already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Started.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
We didn't start talking. But in high school, I was not good at time management, and I didn't do my homework on a regular basis or on time. And I always hated the way it made me feel, but never correlated the two things together to having not been prepared or not done the prep work. And now as an adult in life, I hate not being prepared. So I'm usually like proactive about getting my stuff done, or at least allocating time to try and do it. But the hard part for me.
So you pulled a lever that fixed that.
It was like
somebody probably hit the lever for you.
It was like an emotional trigger. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it was, but
he accidentally elbowed it and goes, "Oh wait, this feels better. I like it this way."
Yeah, it probably was like when I found out we were having our first child, and I was like, "Oh crap, I should
get some books.
I should do a few things to be ready for this. Which there is no being ready. No. But
you waste all that time because
if you could tell me, I'm still a little behind here.
Yeah, still trying to figure it out.
I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's supposed to happen.
Yeah. For this though, like I felt like I was always ahead, but always had to revisit the chapters to feel like I was ready to talk about them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So not always. There were some times where I was like, I need an hour before we talk so that I can get through it. But
that was the exception for me.
Yeah, I'm wondering though if this will actually, not for everybody listening, but for us, will this help us? We talked about, we did this years ago and now we're redoing it again, but will this help some of it sink in more? Because not only did we read it,
right,
but then we had to talk, because everybody learns differently, but like talking about it or whatever, does that like drive the points home? Will they be closer to the top of our brains because we didn't just read it, move to the next chapter, read it, move? I'm not saying we're going to continue to do this on the regular, but I'm just wondering if that, the ability to do it this way, if it'll just stick a little harder because of the way that we went about it.
For me, I think it's 50-50, honestly, because on the one hand, I read it fairly quickly. And then like Brian, I would feel like I was going to be mildly unprepared, but not really worried about it, in saying like what I would say like, Brian, what are we talking about this week? And then it triggers me to remember what I had read, but I hadn't just read it. I'd read it, the further we got into the chapters, the longer ago it was that I read it. So I would have to check back, like you were saying, a little bit to make sure I was prepared. So in that sense, it wasn't more impactful spreading it out, but I think it was more impactful because it forced me to talk about it. Almost like when you're in school and you have to like take a test, like, well, you may have read the book, or you might not have, but then you got to take the test, so to do the podcast, I had to be at least somewhat competent to be able to talk about what we were talking about.
Right.
So I think in that way, it was more impactful than just reading the book.
Yeah. And I think that like having discussion around the topic each week all made it more impactful because like, I think there were several times as we read it that I took away specific things, but then hearing the two of you talk about it sort of like highlighted or correlated things in a different way for me. And I thought that was neat. So
yeah, having never done like I've never done like one of the book club things. I don't know if either of you have. So I've never really had anybody ever give me any significant input on a book. I guess outside of school, which honestly in school I would have not only not done my homework, would have also not read the book.
Right.
So that was interesting, and we'll get to it, but then we have to implement these things. Like we didn't read this book or do the podcast over the last 3 months or whatever it's been, just for an exercise. You know what I mean? Like we did it because it was impactful to us a decade ago. And we realized that if we revisited it, perhaps it could be just as impactful a second time. And so, that was the purpose and there's value in it. So, but if we try and get to the actual chapter right away, all at once. So what is your sort of takeaways on that? What are your main points on the chapter?
I thought, like the two things that I got the most out of were probably like right in the beginning of the chapter where he talks about everyone wants to know like which step's the most important. Which one do I do first? Can I do some of these things and then do some of the other ones later? And I thought like it probably was the most impactful to hear him say like several times, like, nope, everything now. Like the title of the book is Right Away and All at Once for a reason. It's because once you've come up with this plan, you have to do it all. And there is no like phasing or staging. It's these things are all important. And if you're not taking action on them every day, you're probably not making progress. And so I thought that was interesting because it is probably in my nature to say like, all right, I made a list of the 5 things that I have to do. And now which one's the most important? I'll work on that one first. And at times like work on things till completion. And some of those tasks will never be complete, right? Like they are perpetually in front of us and need to be like emphasized on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, and then revisited so that you can make sure that you can keep doing them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So I thought that was most impactful for me. And then the other thing that I loved about the chapter was the idea of like, we've talked about this a lot on and off the podcast. Not making a decision is a decision. Like if you choose to do nothing, you've chosen to do nothing. And
that is a path.
That is a path. Yeah. It's probably not the right path, but it is a path. And so I loved when he talked about like, if you've got to like make 100 decisions or 20 decisions or whatever number he used, he's like, make 20 decisions. You're probably going to get 2 of them wrong. But if you had waited a week to make those 2, you probably might get them wrong anyways. So make them all now. And that way you keep things moving. Make those 20 decisions relatively quickly. And then get to the next set of decisions, and you're going to figure out what went wrong, and you're going to have to make decisions again, and you're going to have to change sometimes the way you make the decision, but continue to make those decisions. So and that's tough for me. Like, that, like we have this conversation all the time. For me, I struggle making decisions until I feel like I've gathered every bit of information that could be possibly, there. And so sometimes for me, I'm like, I'm not ready to make a decision, but I have to at some point realize that you want to make the right decision, but waiting for one more piece of information or spending another 2 or 3 hours doing research is likely going to result in the same decision. Not always, but likely.
So before we go to Ford, right? Because there's so much in what you said. And I'll try to work backwards and not take over the conversation. Like I don't have the stick. So first, the thing that strikes me is that the way that you want to have information, there's no way that anybody feels any better. Like in other words, we would say I make decisions with less information, and I feel comfortable making them and saying, based on what I know, this is what I'm going to do. But I feel like just the same nauseousness you described when you were not prepared, I feel on the backside when I make a decision and then somebody gives me some piece of information that would have altered my decision, right? And the same quick decision making, I can apply that I have some new piece of information and be like, if I had known that, I would have done it different. But knowing that I didn't know how long it would be until I had that information. And if I didn't make the decision, I may have never gotten that piece of information. The reason I got it was because the result or the feedback or the outcome in that feedback loop gave me an answer that would have only come out by making the decision. Had I made no decision, I would have not known that likely. And then I would have just been stuck in a cycle of not making a decision. But it makes you just as nauseous because now you're like, okay, now I made a mistake. What do I do to fix it? Can you fix it? Because that's the part you have to live with in decisions is some decisions you make, you can't unmake the decision. It's not like, if you turn right, you could theoretically make a few more rights, get back to the same spot and make a left. But a lot of times that's not how decisions make. You'll never get back to that spot.
Sure.
You just have to live with it and move on. But the other thing I think is really interesting is I don't think any of us don't want or operate better in making a progression to say, this is how I'm going to deal with things, thing A, thing B. It's calming. It's even if you make quick decisions, if you make it with a lot of information or a little bit of information, we all want to do that. And so the idea that you are going to make all these decisions all at once right away is scary because you're changing a bunch of things. And, let's say it's 5 things. You change 5 things. You don't actually know the outcome. And the 5 things are relevant to each other. So if you had just changed one, you could have slowly evaluated that change and said like, okay, then let's change 2. But if you change 5 at once, it may not even be clear which decision was wrong. Right. It may just be something changed and you have to evaluate that. But it's what he demands. The irony is the dichotomy behind that with the one-page plan is so specific and there's so many steps and so many that it's an odd dichotomy as I look at it because you want me to make all these decisions very quick, not quickly, but at once. Once you have the information you need that you believe you know the direction you have to go, you just go. Mm-hmm. But there's an underlying schedule plan behind it, which has a bunch of metrics and decisions and things that you're trying to follow. So it's an odd dichotomy because he wants you to make all these decisions at once because it's the best cause, but you have 70 pieces of data behind it that are trying to govern what decision you make after the fact, or if not what decision, what path, right? Because that's what this is all trying to do is develop. If you understand where you're trying to get, then you can get there. That part I really understand. And I think it doesn't matter which of our personalities you have. Like in principle, I think most successful people are goal oriented.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they see a goal and then they get to that goal. How you get there there's a lot of different personalities that can do that. So for me, the chapter was really odd because you would think it would be very comforting to me, but it's actually unnerving because, at the end of the day, each of us in our roles has a lot of responsibility. And so when you make those decisions, it's impactful to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think part of it is though, like the golfer, baseball player, athlete of some type, right? Like because amnesia comes in, like what had already, like if you made that decision and then new information came out, you can't go back on the decision because you made the best. Like you almost have to forget that first. You're gonna have to correct that decision, right? Like that's the key. Because my interesting thing is too, we've talked about this, I think here, podcasts and other places, like the communication issues that are happening in the world because people don't pick up the phone. There was one on that Construction Genius about that, or like meeting in person versus emails and stuff like that. Because in that essence, there's been multiple times where I've been burnt because I replied to something too quickly, just flying back off the handle trying to answer something, and then realizing that, like, you know, it's like there's certain, we talked about before, there's a 48 or 24 hour thing. Like, I'm just going to let this sit, and I'm going to get back to it once I have a little time to think on it. I can't just fire back away in that essence. But it's like, okay, you know, I mean, all of the years, all the decisions we've made, some of them we've analyzed more than others. But the reality is, at the point we made the decision, we did it with the best of our information. 2020 is hindsight's 2020. So yeah, of course it was a sucky decision. Like, there's no way around that. But at that point, like, you can't fix it. I mean, you can't change the decision. You can't go back and do an erase button, or escape button. So basically, it's just like, okay, well, that was that, and we got to move on. I was thinking, like, with golf, like, you hit a bad shot, you got to go hit the next shot. Like, you got to forget that last shot, because if you hit one, you're still thinking about the bad one. Then you hit the next one. There's about an 85 to 90% chance the next one's going to be bad
too.
Right? Or you strike out in baseball. Like, the next time you come up against that pitcher, you can't be thinking about that strikeout, because you're going to strike out again. I mean, if they got your number, they got your number. You basically have to have that amnesia of, like, okay, fresh thing, fresh start. Let's just keep on going from there. Yeah. I mean, certain things have ramifications that are longer term. So that's where the tough stuff comes in, because, you know, certain decisions you're reminded about them for a longer period of time than others. But the reality is, you know, I think that's kind of what I grasped from it more, was like, you make those 20 decisions or whatever you're talking about. And then if you're making a new one because some new data point came in that helped you, that's a new decision. It's not actually going backwards. It's literally like, okay, well, we got to make a new decision on this next day, and then there'll be 2 new wrong ones or whatever it is. But if you get 18 right, which is pretty good batting average there, but even if you get like 16 right, hopefully those 16 you don't have to redo. So, like, you're only dealing with such a small subset that you have to edit, tweak, adjust, make new decisions on. So basically it's like, okay, those you can dump out, slide them off the side, right, you know, scratch through them, and then you only have those plus new ones that come up on. So I think that's kind of more the way of where it comes from. It's like, okay, going to make that decision. It's going to be what it is. All right, we got to move on, and then we'll deal with the ramification as they come, because there's really only, and, you know, the other thing is that sometimes there's decisions that seem bigger than they actually are, right? Like, that's the reality. You know, we always talk about, there's been times where we've had team members where they just weren't a right fit, right? And we'd struggle over it. Myself, you know, more than anything, I remember that. Like, it was the hardest thing, because you're admitting that they weren't the right fit, you know, hoping that they can go find a better spot for themselves later. And then, you know, the day happens and they move on, or you're asked them to move on. And you look back and it's like, oh, I should have done that much quicker, or I should have done it, you know, it's better for them. It's better for us. It's better for the team, like all that kind of stuff. But you agonize over it, and you try and find ways to keep it, you know, like, oh no, we can salvage this, or we can do this. And it's like, you know, but then it's like, you don't want to make a rash decision, because people have rough days or different things like that. So you're trying to make sure that it's not just a singular thing, but then it's done. And then maybe you hire a new person for that role, and they're even better than the first person was. Like, you know, it's that really interesting thing, I think, with team and having them on the team is probably the biggest space where this is one of those things where, like, you can't rush to judgment, but at the same time, like, when it's time, and you just can't really, like, you look back and you're like, I lost sleep over that. And 2 days after it, I realized that it was the best thing it was the best thing for the team that we could have done.
And I think you hit on a lot of good points. I mean, you got to be able to move on. You know what I mean? You got to be able to just make decisions. And I think that's what separates people as you progress in your career. You know, people that have more responsibility, more decisions to make. It's not that they make better decisions inherently. It's that they're comfortable making the decisions. I mean, I'm not saying they make worse decisions, but I'm saying, how many people do we know that we think are really quality human beings, quality individuals, good workers, but have difficulty managing the stress at the level they're at, and with the decision making or the success, or because it can be a number of different pressures, you know, with the personnel issues, with any of those issues, and that becomes a limiting factor. The limiting factor is not, are they capable? Are they intelligent? Are they a good person? Are they a good culture fit? the limiting factor that stops them from having more responsibility is that they're not able to deal with the pressure that they feel from having to make the decisions. So, and you learn that each day, you know what I mean? Each day that I'm in this role, I have to realize that like, I'm going to have to make decisions. Like it's, my grandfather was a superintendent and then worked for the state of New Jersey as a state superintendent. And he used to say, I get paid to make decisions. Like it's what they pay me to do. I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to live with it. And it might be the wrong decision, he would say. But they're paying me to make a decision. In essence, they're paying me to make the wrong one. Like, because no decision would be worse than the wrong decision. Because the wrong decision, it was not, I need to adjust. I have new information, as Ford said. And that's the other thing that's really important that Ford said that I have to remember is that you can't take information that is the result of a decision and then try and apply it back to say, well, if I had known that, but the only way to know that, it's like an experiment, is to do it. You know what I mean? And that's all, right away and all at once is if you don't make these decisions, you'll never know the resultants of those decisions. Mm-hmm. And then you'll never able to be better. Because to be better, you need to make 4 of 5 right decisions and then 4 of 5 right decisions and 4 of 5 right decisions. And if you keep doing that in time, all of a sudden you'll have made, 100 decisions that were good for the company. And the 10 that you made that were not so good, you fixed and didn't have a major impact.
Yeah. It's hard because you start thinking about it from that perspective and you start saying 4 of 5, 4 of 5, 4 of 5, you get to 100 and you've made 20 wrong decisions. And you're like, man, 20 wrong decisions. Did I really mess up? But you made 80 right decisions. Right. So it is hard to not make the wrong decision.
Yep.
Or I love the term analysis paralysis. I don't think I heard it from this book because I feel like I've been using it for a long time.
Yep.
But he uses that term, the analysis paralysis, is don't be so overwhelmed by the information that could be available that you do nothing. And for me personally, that can be challenging.
So I have a question for both of you.
Yeah.
How many times do you think your decision has actually changed? Like you get your base information, right? For me, there's a gut decision already in there. How many times does new or additional information actually change? You know what I mean? Like you're waiting, but the answers are, you already have the answer, but you're just like,
I think it's,
or do you can actually wait? Cause just cause that's me. Like, I mean, I get 2 facts and I'm like, I already have it as it's in there.
Sure.
Now I'm going to try to wait and get some other factors in to see if there's anything that could alter it. But I would say 99% of the time, it still goes back to the initial feeling, you know what I mean? Or can you actually keep that buried in okay, I still have a plain, I'm just waiting for more and more. For me, I can't. It's literally either I'm listening to my oversized gut too much or whatever, but it's just right away. I used to always, when we were doing quizzing, the first answer that popped in my head when I was answering a question. And then if I think on it longer, there's a chance I got it wrong because then I start questioning myself if it was, but it's usually just okay, that was the thing that popped in my head. I'm going to answer with that. And the percentages were higher that was correct than if I'm all right, I have 30 seconds. Let me think through this. Oh no, is that a little different? Almost overturning it. So
I mean, for me, I would say and we don't have statistics, but if I'm going to try and make this statistics, I think 9 out of 10 times I make the decision that I thought I would make when I had my sample size of information. It would take something pretty significant to move me off of it, which is probably not I don't know whether it's healthy or not healthy, but it's being honest. But I feel like it's probably that 80-20, that 80% of the time the decision was probably the right decision and 20% maybe I wasn't right. And you have to live with those statistics. And I make a sports analogy with it, that with the girls playing soccer, it's becoming the sport that I'll use the analogies from. But when my daughter plays striker, if she scores 2 out of the 10 times she gets down the field, she's the hero. When she plays center back, if she gives up a goal 1 out of the 10, or especially 2 out of the 10 times, and she gets beat and lets somebody get on the goalie 1-on-none, she's completely failed, right? So it is so where you are in a situation. Situational decision making is so important. If you're making a decision that is for gain, right? That is for an aggressive move, for growth. If you're in that growth mindset, you're looking for a job, you can afford to make a mistake because you have time to fix it. It's when you're in a defensive position that you're trying to protect against something happening. There's a threat. and you're trying to protect against the threat, that's when you need to have a lot of information. But the irony is, and the book points this out repeatedly, is that you probably need to make the decisions quicker when you're in the threat position. Like when you're pushing, you actually have a little bit of time. But when you're under threat, you don't have a lot of time to figure out, like, is the guy going to go left? Are they going to go right? Are they going to make a move? Are they going to shoot from here? You don't have that kind of time. You just got to, like Ford said, you got to analyze the information you got sitting in front of you and make the best decision you can, and then be prepared to make another decision.
Mhm.
You know? So
Yeah.
for me, that's, I think, statistically where I am, but also that's sort of the thinking of how I'll make a decision faster under pressure when there's a threat perceived than
Yeah.
I will when I'm trying to be aggressive. When I'm actually being aggressive, I'm a little bit more planful.
Yeah, interesting. I think for me, it's very circumstantial. Like I feel like I do a really good job of like weighing pretty quickly the gravity of a decision and making like less consequential decisions very fast. And sometimes that surprises people because like I'm not change adverse. So even though like I love routine and I love rules and I love predictability, I'm not change adverse. So that surprises people sometimes because if I think there's an opportunity of relatively low consequence to make a quick change, I'll just go. I'll just like, yep, that's the decision. Let's change. And people are like, wait, like that we had this thing we've been doing for 3 or 4 years. And I'm like, yeah, but this thing's better. And that doesn't work anymore. So go. And there's no like lead up time and stuff like that. But when I think there's a something of big consequence or gravity, I often wouldn't say that I would like not have a feeling on the decision or not have some sense of which direction I'm going anyways. But specifically in instances where there's the human element involved or you're making a decision that you know will have potentially a big impact on the lives of our folks, right? So like I'm thinking about like benefits specifically, right? So like going through like our insurance renewal, big decision, you know, we're talking about making a decision that regardless of the outcome costs us upwards of over $500,000, $750,000, depending on the circumstantial evidence, right? And so like thinking about like the sort of the utilitarian approach, I feel like oftentimes when I'm faced with that sort of a decision, trying to analyze what has the best impact for the most people, I really like weigh a lot of, I think like peripheral information in those, even though I probably already have a sense of where it should go, what the outcome will be, all of those things. So I think it really is like circumstantial for me. Also knowing like my centers of influence, right? So my centers of influence, part of that utilitarian approach, trying to like do the most for the most, knowing that at times, maybe even amongst my own centers of influence, it might not be the decision that is the best for them, right? So like that's probably where I like drag my feet the most.
You know what's funny is on the insurance thing specifically, and you and I have talked about this.
Right.
Is I feel bad when you like beat yourself up and you want to review 1,000 pieces of information and you want to have all these things. And I've said it to you that like, Brian, like the reality is you have 3 bad choices.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a right choice. I don't think it exists. I think insurance is a broken system that is completely flawed, and they have undermined the very basis of the whole principle. Simply the whole principle of the insurance is if you, Ford, and I all pay into a pot, saying that if one of us has something go wrong and something happens, that if we all pay into it, then it can afford to pay for the one person, and it is highly unlikely that all 3 of us will have a similar thing happen at the same time. So if we pay in every year, it offsets. The one thing you can't do is draw a profit off of that.
Right.
So the system is completely broken. And having said that, that's what makes me feel bad for you. Is like you're trying to make a decision of what's best, and everyone is going to be unhappy no matter what you pick. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so
that's true.
But it plays into
except for some insurance agent.
let me change that. I'm sorry.
Anybody on our side.
Anybody on our side is going to be unhappy.
Yes.
The shiny shoes people that Tom refers to, they're all very, very happy. I see them all the time, always very happy.
Yeah, always happy.
Yeah.
They play a lot of golf.
They play a lot of golf, and they tell you they're really sorry that it goes this way,
Yeah.
but they're doing the best they can.
It's just the market. It's just
the market.
Can't do anything to help you, but we'll take your check.
But, so
Please
if
don't go
they're
somewhere
listening,
else.
Yeah.
you know how we really feel. But you know what I mean? Like genuinely, like, and I know at the end of the day that you are going to make the best decision that you possibly can that benefits the most of our people, whether I'm in the beneficial group or not.
Sure.
And yet when I talk to Erin and she's like, how can the insurance be this bad? I'm like, because it's this bad. Do you honestly think that Brian didn't do everything he could to make this as good as it possibly could? I said, you're just not understanding how bad his choices are, you know? And again, right away, all at once, like that's the thing is people are not going to like decisions that you have to make, but
Sure. Yeah.
that's why you get paid to make them. You know what I mean? You get paid to make them because it's not a choice. I didn't say like, Brian, would you like to have, vanilla or chocolate ice cream for everyone? Like that's like, who cares? I don't pick whatever you want. I don't care. Like I don't pick, if you don't like chocolate, too bad. Like I got you ice cream. Are you actually going to complain? You know what I mean? But when it's a hard decision, that's not how it goes, you know? And the analysis paralysis thing is huge with me as well. And we've talked about it, I think, on the podcast that I still, of all the like tics that I would have, one of the oddest ones, and I know exactly where it came from, is when skiing, if I'm going to do something crazy, right before I go over the point at which there is no return from doing it, I like click my poles together. And it's just the noise in my head that I'm like, that noise to me means like it's on now. Like we're going to go and figure it out. You know what I mean? And it developed from physically that I had to, it's before I ever read Atomic Habits. I mean, you're going back to when I was like 17, 18 years old, but the noise was like, we were standing on the edge of a hill and everybody was talking about, we can't possibly make it down the rest of this hill. And that was a correct assessment. The three of us, my cousin and his friend, all knew that none of us could ski this trail. It was going to end badly, but we were halfway down. Like there was no, and so I just said, nothing you can do. And like banged my poles together to say like, let's go. And like jumped in and I made it some distance and then got completely obliterated. Right. But you like picked up your stuff and you got to the bottom of the hill as safely as you could. And you realized like the decision that was a mistake was not clicking the poles and jumping down the hills. That was the best decision I could make at that point. Right. The mistake was going on a trail that we had no business being on. But once you're in that, you just got to be willing to make decisions, you know?
What's Hunter call it? He calls it like the best wrong decision or something like that.
Yeah, he said make the best worst decision that you can. Pick the best worst choice. That's what he says. Yeah. The best worst choice, which has to be a Navy SEAL thing from him, has to be a military thing, right. But the best worst choice. And I use that a lot now.
Yeah.
You know, I said, well, what's the best worst choice?
They're all bad choices, so just make the best
Just make the best decision you can. And as long as my great-grandfather used to say, bon intention, a thing de personality. I'm close, the accent's off, but it's a good decision is a personal thing, like a good choice. So if you always try and do the right thing, if the thing you're trying to do is make the next best decision for the group, then it might not go well, but the decision came from the right place. And then you just keep doing that and you string it together and you hope you get where you're going. And I shouldn't say hope. Hope is not a strategy. You will get where you're going if you put one decision after another that is the best decision you can make at that point. And that's the point of the book is just make the decisions and gather the information that you need. I mean, that is key. We've talked for 20 minutes about decision-making. And the one thing we haven't talked about is the thing he did before that decision-making was assess the situation and the data and decide where you are, what caused you to be where you are and where you need to be. Identify the 5 things, right? That's what he said. He doesn't say 5, but the levers.
Right.
Pick a certain amount of things that you can control, that you can make a decision that you believe will be impactful, and then pull all of them and see what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In a really funny thing yesterday, so I was running around to check for salt, see how much salt was left. And I pulled in and I got this quantity of salt at one of our sites, and I'm pulling back out and I called Tom and I was like, hey, I don't know why they did it, but they parked the wheel loader in the salt bin, which we say don't do. Like you don't want the machines in the salt bin. I was like, I don't think I have my keys on me. I think I actually left them at my house. But we got to move this thing. And I pull through the gate and Tom says, well, the key could be in the machine. That's true. All right. I'll go back and check. So I run back, keys in the machine. I open the big door, get the kill switch off, start the machine, move the bucket just to make sure everything's ready to go. Go to move it. And I'm like, okay, where's the parking brake on this machine? All those old wheel loaders are different.
Yeah.
And then I find the parking brake. I go to move it. All of a sudden, the bucket won't move. And I'm like, what happened to this thing now? The bucket, which I wanted to shake the bucket out because it was physically in the salt. So I called Tom, and he's like, well, this is a new one. I've never had the bucket not move. I mean, the hydraulics were okay, and now they're not okay. And I was like, it's almost like I hit something. And in my head, I know already that I probably hit 5 buttons before I figured out where the parking brake was. So I'm hitting every button that I think I hit. I'm like, it's just weird. And Tom's like, well, I mean, if worse comes to worse, just back it up, put it in park. At least it's out of the salt bin, and we'll deal with it. And I was like, okay. And I glanced, and I'm like, all of a sudden there was a lever on my right foot when I had gotten in that I didn't hit with my hand, that I had just banged into, that clicked the hydraulic cutoff off. So I put it back on. But the reason I bring it up is it wasn't even a decision I made, right? But I had to go through and slowly identify, like, okay, what decisions did I make when I got in here? I knew I had hit whatever the button on the thumb used to do something on the control. I hit that, it didn't do anything. I hit these other buttons. This one that says lock, unlock, the buttons don't move, right? Like, it's a really old machine. But I had to identify what the wrong decision was.
Sure.
And then I had to adjust. And, then I shook the bucket out and I called Tom. I said, hey, everything's good. It's out. I'll leave it outside so the rain can get it. But we got to get down here and wash this machine off, And if at any point I had stopped making decisions or just done nothing, that would have been the wrong decision.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it literally just happened in a very minor thing, in something that I'm not normally any part of the decision making on.
Yeah.
But if you're not willing to see it through, if you're not willing to make a decision, you are going to make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Find a solution. You know what I mean? Another Don Hunter saying is, what does he say for it? He says, if you bringing me a problem without a solution is a problem unto itself. Yeah. That's another one of his things that he says. Right. And we never said it that way, but we always said
don't bring me a problem,
don't bring me a problem, bring me solutions. Yeah. You know what I mean? And Don's is a funny way of saying it, but it's not only that you're bringing me a problem, that is a problem.
Yeah.
So
it's a problem that you brought me a problem, not a solution.
Because it wasn't your job was to bring me a solution.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. It was a good way to wrap the book up. And I think it's been impactful. And I think that, like, if anything, it's probably at least a reminder that we should have done this a couple of years ago and not wait 5 or 9 years or whatever it's been since we did it the first time.
Yep.
So that's a good place to wrap it up, I think. So thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you got something from this. And we won't be talking about the book, but we hope you come back for another episode.